Prime Field.
A team is 20-0 unanimous number 1, chasing perfection like it's a deadline. And then in the middle of January, UConn shows two different faces on purpose. January 19th, 2026. Gampel Pavilion. Notre Dame walks in on a 3-game win streak against UConn, an anomaly in a rivalry built on control. Notre Dame brings Hannah Hidalgo, averaging 25 points a night, leading the ACC third nationally in scoring. UConn answers with suffocation. 85-47. A season-low 47 points for Notre Dame, and the fewest the Irish have ever scored in the rivalry. Hidalgo held to 16 on 5 of 15 shooting and scoreless in the first quarter. 3 days later, January 22nd in Washington, D.C., UConn wins again. 83-42. But this time the story isn't the score. It's the rotation. It's the lab work. So what's real and what's rehearsal? Is UConn building a team for January or a blueprint for March? This stretch isn't just 2 games on a schedule. It's a controlled comparison. The report's core idea is simple. Geno Auriemma is operating 2 tactical identities. One is necessity, a tight, cohesive 7-player rotation built to neutralize elite threats, protect chemistry, and keep defensive communication clean. The other is experiment, a deep 10-player rotation built to cultivate depth, manage physiological load, and raise the team's floor before the NCAA tournament grind hits. And the argument is bigger than opponent quality. The juxtaposition itself is the point. The central question becomes existential, the kind that decides, don't March. Can a team with a championship ceiling set by its starters raise its floor high enough to survive attrition? The Notre Dame game shows the ceiling. The Georgetown game tests the floor. January 19th wasn't treated like a normal game. Notre Dame's 3-game streak against UConn created historical urgency, the kind that threatens psychological dominance even when the rankings still favor UConn. And Notre Dame didn't just arrive with a number next to its name. No 23. It arrived with a problem: Hannah Hidalgo. A player averaging 25.0 points per game doesn't get solved with one defender. She gets solved with a system that doesn't crack when substitutions start stacking up, because against a scorer at that volume, every miscommunication is a layup, every late switch is a clean pull-up, every tired closeout becomes a rhythm 3. So UConn contracted. The report calls it a strategic contraction, a deliberate reliance on the tight 7. Not for comfort, for control, and it sets up what comes next. Because that kind of control has a cost. The defensive goal was not subtle. It was surgical. Hidalgo entered averaging 25.0 a game. UConn held her to 16 on 5 of 15 shooting, 33.3%. And the pressure arrived immediately. She was held scoreless in the first quarter, as UConn jumped to a 16-7 lead. That early line matters. It says the scheme wasn't something UConn found in the second half. It was installed from the opening possession. And the perimeter didn't breathe either. Notre Dame went 1 of 16 from 36.3%. This is what the report is really describing when it talks about necessity. Not just fewer players, but a defense that depends on continuity. The defenders highlighted here are KK Arnold and Ashlyn Shade, the primary defenders in the plan that held Hidalgo down. And the result wasn't just a win. It was a data point. A ceiling-level performance that shows what UConn can look like when every substitution is made reluctantly and every minute is treated like a scarce resource, which leads directly into the next piece: minutes. Minutes tell the truth coaches don't always say out loud. Against Notre Dame, AZ Fudd played 37 minutes. That number is the loudest sentence in the box score. It signals reliance on veteran spacing on decision-making, on stability in high-leverage moments. Sarah Strong played 32 minutes with 18 points, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks, and 3 steals. The report frames her as the anchor, and the workload matches that label. The starters, Fudd, Strong, Arnold, Shade, and Sarah Williams, absorbed the overwhelming majority of the competitive minutes. The offense shot 56% from the field, and the report ties that efficiency to rhythm, to continuity, to the cohesive flow that comes from living in the same lineup. Kaylee Heckel played 20 minutes as the first guard off the bench, the primary relief for Arnold and Fudd. In this framework, that's not bench minutes, that's trust. And everyone else? Situational, limited. The report calls it a trust index in high-stakes environments. The starters are trusted implicitly. Heckle is trusted as the primary backup, and the rest are viewed as matchup tools. But the report also warns about the toll. 37 minutes for FUD in January isn't free. It's a withdrawal. And 3 days later, UConn goes to Washington with a chance to deposit something back. January 22nd against Georgetown presents a different kind of opportunity. Not because Georgetown isn't a road test, but because the game script flips fast. By halftime, UConn leads 51-20, a plus 31 margin. The report calls this the rotation trigger, a game score margin that changes the mission midstream. In the first half, the starters still do the work that creates separation. But once the cushion is built, the priorities shift. Now, it's not just about securing the win. It's about developing the roster. The second half becomes live fire for what the report calls lineup C combinations that don't normally get competitive reps together. The staff extends to a deep 10 rotation, something that would be reckless against Notre Dame but essential here. And the minutes immediately show the objective. Against Georgetown, the minutes flatten. 10 players log at least 4 minutes. The starters still anchor early, but the distribution changes in a way the Notre Dame game never allowed. AZ Fudd plays 30 minutes, a reduction of 7 compared to Notre Dame. KK Arnold plays 23, 2 fewer. Sarah Williams plays 21, 3 fewer. The report frames this as load management with purpose. Saving 5 to 7 high-intensity minutes isn't cosmetic. It's the kind of small deposit that matters later. But the biggest individual swing is Blanca Quiñonez. She plays 22 minutes and produces 8 points and 4 assists. This isn't described as random opportunity. It's described as an audition, a test of whether she can function as a sixth starter, the bridge between the tight rotation and the deep one. Ali Ziebel plays 14 minutes and hits 2 of 4 from 3. In the report's terms, that's a trust data point, proof of a specific skill set that can be deployed when spacing is non-negotiable. And the bench production is the loud contrast. The reserves outscore Georgetown's bench 23-6, estimated from box score data. A flip from the Notre Dame game where bench scoring was minimal and offensive reliance on depth was almost non-existent. This is experiment in action, empowered minutes designed to raise the floor. And then the most revealing moment arrives. Not in the first half, not in the score, in who finishes the game. In a necessity game, the closing group is usually obvious: secure the result, manage the clock, trust the known. Against Georgetown, the report argues something different happened. Auriemma used the endgame to test the next layer. With 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Sarah Strong and AZ Fudd exit. They're replaced by Ayanna Patterson and Ali Ziebel. The final group features Sarah Williams, Ashlyn Shade, Blanca Quiñonez, Caroline Ducharme, and Kellis Fisher, with rotations involving Patterson and Heckle. That's not just substitution, that's a hypothesis. A developmental 5 deployed to finish, because the staff is searching for an 8th reliable player before the Big East tournament. And the structure of this closing unit reveals the logic: keep Williams and Shade on the floor as a backbone, interior presence and elite defense, while testing the younger pieces around them. Then comes the variable that changes the entire blueprint, even without a single box score highlight. Caroline Ducharme returns after missing 461 days due to head and neck injuries. She checks in for the final 3 minutes against Georgetown. The stat line is quiet, 0 points, 0 rebounds. But the report says the significance isn't production, it's presence, it's durability, it's a trust index test. Because if Ducharme can be reintegrated, she represents something no freshman can replicate: veteran scoring prowess. In this blueprint, her cameo isn't a showcase. It's an entry point, a first step from experiment minutes toward necessity relevance. And if she makes that jump, the report is clear: the ceiling shifts. Because depth stops being theoretical, it becomes experienced, which brings the analysis home to hierarchy. Across these 2 games, the report calibrates the roster's trust index. Up Blanca Quiñonez, The Georgetown minutes, plus a referenced 13-point performance against Villanova, indicate graduation from situational reserve to core rotation. She becomes the bridge between identities. Up, Kaylee Heckel. 20 minutes against Notre Dame. The high-leverage environment confirms she's the trusted backup point guard. Georgetown doesn't erase that. It reinforces it. Maxed Sarah Strong. Over 30 minutes in both games. Anchor and necessity. Anchor and experiment. Situational, Ali Zubel, the 2 of 4 from 3 against Georgetown is valuable. But a limited usage against Notre Dame signals specialist, not staple. At least for now. Situational depth. Ayanna Patterson and Jana L. Alfie. 4 minutes each against Georgetown suggests emergency utility. Foul trouble, physical matchups, not core rotation. And then a conclusion the report insists on. The static rotation is trending down. The team isn't fixed, it's contextual. The fluctuation between a 6-player core and a 12-player trial means evolution is still underway, which leads to the trade-off that defines the whole experiment. Depth minutes create a domino effect. The Georgetown experiment allows starters like Fudd and Arnold to offload physical wear. The report frames it like banking, saving 5 to 7 minutes of high-intensity running as a deposit for postseason. And the reason is clear. UConn's history with injuries hangs over every decision. The report treats load management as preventative, not cosmetic, but there's a cost, rhythm. The offensive continuity against Notre Dame, 56% shooting, is tied to the tighter rotation and the flow that comes from repetition. Against Georgetown, the deep rotation produces a disjointed feel. And the report notes 27.6% shooting from 3. Depth can cool hands, but depth can save legs. So the challenge becomes integration, how to pivot back into tight 7 rhythm quickly, without abandoning the deep 10 development that might be necessary later. And the report introduces a counterfactual that makes the logic unavoidable. Imagine Georgetown with no experiment. Imagine chasing a bigger margin by pushing starters toward 35 minutes again. The report argues the marginal utility would be negative, more fatigue, less value. A burnout scenario by mid-February becomes plausible. It specifically points toward physical opponents like South Carolina or Tennessee as the kind of games where cumulative wear shows up. That's why the report's conclusion lands. The Georgetown game wasn't a luxury. It was a physiological necessity, designed to prevent the necessity rotation from breaking down. So the March blueprint is not a choice between 2 identities. It's a synthesis. Notre Dame's established the ceiling. A tight 7 capable of suffocating elite offenses and scoring with high efficiency. Georgetown attempted to raise the floor. A deep 10 used to develop the 8th and 9th players needed to survive foul trouble or injury in the NCAA tournament. The goal is to arrive deep in March with a tight 7 that's physically fresh, because February was used wisely, and with reserves who have earned something rare, trust equity. And that leaves one final question, the kind that only March can answer. When the margin disappears, and experiment is no longer possible, will UConn have found the 8th player before it needs them most?
Prime Field!